Hello and welcome to the Snapdragon Studio YouTube channel. It's really lovely to have you here. My name is Jane and today I'm going to be talking about the difference that comes when you work from your heart, your gut, your body, rather than when you're just relying on your mind, your brain. Many of you, if you are part of Bloom or you're a member of the studio community, you will know that at the end of last month, my dad died. He had fallen earlier in the summer and banged his head, and that caused a bleed on his brain. So for the last 7 weeks of his life, he was being cared for in hospital. Now, clearly, when something like this happens, everything changes. And it has been amazing how the studio community, people doing Bloom, have really supported me through this. But that's not what I want to talk to you about today. What I want to talk to you about is how it gave me a really good opportunity to see the differences between when I work a really structured, brain-focused, productivity kind of way, and when I allow myself to lean more into heart, gut, soul, feelings, intuition. So about the time that my dad fell, in the studio community, we were kind of coming to the end of one course, which was called Stitched. And it was really about that generation of women, sort of like from the 1930s to 1960s, who came before us and really looking at their lives and the embroidery that they did, all of those tea cloths that people inherit. So we come to the end of that, and we were having a summer where we decided that we would work on abandoned projects or look at things we wanted to finish off and that. And the idea was that behind the scenes, I would be working on the next course. So I had the outlines of the modules. I had kind of like an overarching theme. I had lots of different techniques and skills that I thought would fit into it. And then obviously my dad went into hospital, and I wanted to be able to still continue work in some form, but I needed to shrink down the hours in the day that it was taking. And what I found was that my way of doing that became really structured. It was almost as though, because I couldn't control anything that was going on with my dad, it really felt just completely out of control, beyond anything I could cope with. I started to try and control work. And I don't know whether that resonates with anybody. So I had so many tick lists. I had flow charts. I had lots and lots and lots of lists. And I was producing this really kind of, a conventional course. There's nothing wrong with this course at all. It would have been very nice for people to do. But I wasn't really connecting with it, and I wasn't excited, and I was finding it a heavy lift. And I thought, well, that's hardly surprising. You're probably not in the state of mind to be excited about anything. Just continue, tick your tick lists, do your boxes. And at the same time, I also found myself worrying about productivity. And one of the ways that this played out was the hospital where my dad is about, was about 2 hours drive from my home. 2.5 if you caught the traffic. So I decided that this was potential productive time, and that I would listen to audiobooks or business podcasts, things as I went, inching along the Edinburgh bypass, listening to improving works. And then lots of them are very dull. After a particularly distressing afternoon at the hospital, I came out to my car and I had a little weep, and I thought, I just want to listen to a story. And I'm sure that was the comfort thing. I wanted to be read a story. So I looked through my audiobook library and I found a book of folk tales, which I'd listened to before. Thought, well, that would be really nice. So headed off home, listening to tales of, Baba Yaga and Snow White and Rose Red and all of this kind of thing. Now, between Edinburgh and Stirling is the M9 motorway. And along that, there is this magnificent sculpture it's called the Kelpies, and it is the heads of these mythical sea horses, the Kelpies, rising up as though rising from water. And it's metallic, and the scale of it is enormous. These are the size of blocks of flats. It's amazing. And I always love driving past that bit. As it came into sight, a story started on my audiobook, and I got goosebumps. I had heard this story before, but I hadn't really listened to it. It hadn't registered. And it is different from the other folk tales in the collection. It is collected from the Irish traveller community, and it is a story which is called The Women Who Gather. It's a story about women who collect the wool from hedges and thorny bushes. And I don't know whether that's something that you have done while walking. I certainly have a collection of little bits of wool that I have gleaned from the hedgerows like that. And these women, they collect it all together, and then at night they go back to their camp and they sing joyous songs, and they dye the wool red, and then they spin it into cords, which are going to be the blessings for every child in the world. And the difference between this story and the other kind of like more archetypal folk tales was that I could see these women as real women, because I could be somebody who walked along the hedges. I do dye wool that I find. I would love to spin. I love making cordage. It connected me into a reality in a different way. I felt it here. But the goosebumps were because I suddenly knew that all of that work that I had been doing for the next course in the studio, I was going to just shelve. And instead, I was going to create something that came from this very real folk tale. And it was something that every bit of my body was excited about and knew. And it was a decision that came not from my head, not from any sense of strategy or structure, but from inside me. And that is threaded. And it starts on the equinox, as all good new things really should, on the 21st. But what I wanted to mention here was the differences that it made. So first of all, there was an energy. I had thought that my lack of energy for work, my lack of engagement, my lack of excitement was due to family concerns. But it turned out that that was not the case, because as soon as I felt the pull to make this threaded, to create something from this folk tale, my energy went up, my engagement went up, my excitement went up. No more time. But the quality of feeling went up. Second thing that happened was that I realized that what I want to create isn't actually a course. It's not that conventional. It's not that boxed in. You know, I want to make things where there could never, ever be an assignment. You know, it's not homework. But instead, it's properly transformative. And I realized really quickly that this isn't a course. It's something else. And at the moment, I am calling it a creative season. It's going to be 6 months-ish, equinox to equinox-ish. A season of wintering, perhaps, and transformation and creation. So that's the word that I have for it at the moment. It is a creative season. Thirdly, I suddenly got this courage to talk about it in this way, to realise that to many people I will just sound as though I'm bats. And to realise inside, no imposter syndrome, no, I think that, but just this feeling of this is what I'm meant to be doing, that carries me over any doubts. And fourth, it gave me the courage to own that my skills are skills of response to things. I don't know if any of you know anything about human design. My human design is that I am a heretic investigator and manifestor generator. If you know about human design, that will mean something. If you don't, it won't. And don't worry about it. But what it means is that my way of working best is if I respond to things, rather than sitting inside myself and kind of coming up with lots of ideas, which is what I was trying to do with that course, coming up with like rational ideas and connections and tick lists and the way that you would put a course together. That doesn't work particularly well for me. What works much better is if I see something and I think, yes. That's what I want to run with. And it means that actually my best work is done, not on the hoof exactly, but as a response to the previous piece of work. So anytime I try to batch, it's a disaster. Anytime I have really long forward plans, they're not great. So what this has given me is the courage to own that and go, yes, in Threaded, I know what we're doing for the first 4 weeks. We are going to be taking that first part of this tale, that collecting of wool, and we're going to make 3 plies from it. And the first thread is going to be folklore and history and connecting back to the reality and the stories of women. And the second ply of it is going to be making beautiful felted beads, wet felted beads that are embroidered and are dyed with plants from the garden or from your compost bin or whatever, embroidered. We're going to do that making, and that's because I believe that making things with your hands is the fastest way to connect both backwards and forwards and to find your place in the world. And that is going to be the third ply of this cord that we are making. It is personal transformation. It is listening to ourselves. It is seeing where our creativity takes us and how it fits into our world. So that is it. And I realise that there are going to be people watching this who go, that seems just a little bit too much. It's a bit weird. All I want to do is to learn how to make felt beads. And that is fine. Absolutely fine. But I also know that there will be people watching who recognise this, who recognise a kind of a stirring, a calling, a wish for making to not just be about the made thing, for it not to have that productivity thing, for it to be more meaningful, to be transformative, to be a recognition and maybe a reclaiming of ourselves. And if you're one of these people, here are sort of like the practical things about threaded. Now, it is perfectly possible, technically, to buy threaded as a course. It costs £250, takes place over 6 months-ish, and for £250, you get 18 months full access to that. However, I would personally prefer it if people access it through the studio community. And even though I get a lot less money, so it's very much heart, not head, there are many reasons for that. And one is that the studio is a community. And I really believe that the energy that you have in communities, even if you're not an active member of those communities, so even if you're not at the live Zooms, even if you're not commenting in the forums or sort of asking questions in lives, that energy field of it being a group of people, I believe, is very powerful. And also on a practical level, in the studio, we have the forum, we have private blogs, we have comments pages, we've got lives. So there's a whole load of places where people can share, ask questions, come together, see other people. And I feel that that is really, really valuable. The studio costs £15 a month. There is no minimum term. If you join, you don't like it, you can just turn off, auto renew, no questions asked. I believe that this kind of work, the access to creativity, to connection, is so important that it shouldn't be determined by income. So there are supported places available, and all of the details are in the links underneath. If you are somebody who just hates the idea of subscriptions, and I completely understand and respect that, one way to do this is to sign up for a year's membership, which is a discounted rate. And then as soon as you've done that, to switch off the auto renew in your account. And then you will have a year's access for much less than if you bought the course. And you'll be getting all of the other things that are there. Threaded begins on the 21st. So that's the equinox, that's Sunday. And on that date, everybody who is either a studio member or who has signed up to Threaded specifically will get an email, and that will have the introduction of what we're going to be doing. It's going to have of me reading out the folktale. It's have supplies, that kind of thing. And then on Tuesday, it is the start proper. We have an email goes out on Tuesday with all of the material for the week, and we have a live every Friday, 5 p.m, where we can get together, we can discuss things. There are live workshops and so on. So I say the first month we are going to be making felt beads. And the second month, I think we're going to be eco-printing. If you've got any questions, get in touch. But otherwise, until next week, bye-bye.